Okay, so welcome everyone. Good evening, and welcome back to the second event in our series. Today we talk about marketing redefined with AI and ML. I do not think I need to expand AI and ML. They have become common words: artificial intelligence and machine language. They continue to be, everyone wonders what they are. So we try and demystify them for you today. And we have four practitioners who will specifically talk about some use cases to help you understand how it is really being used in practice. So marketing is actually getting redefined. So very quickly, the way marketing functions will start getting to change. MI and AL and the different analytics tools are expected to help in strategizing, targeting, and ad targeting, lead generation, and search optimization. So many of these things will completely change, and they are already changing. And our panelists today will talk about some of these things for you. AI tools can analyze customers and create specific campaigns and smarter ads. So that's what it will do for marketing, which means that you hopefully have better value for money spent, and marketing will probably become more efficient. This may also lead to changes in the marketing organization, and we'll talk about that in a while. But let's get on to the three panelists. We have Dharmendra Khanna, who works for SSIPL, and he heads the Lotto brand. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Lotto brand. He has earlier worked for Kavi in the e-commerce services business. Hi, welcome Dharmendra.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Our second panelist today is Zubin. Zubin works for Flipkart and is implementing analytics solutions as part of the centralized planning and operations at Flipkart. Important role.
Hi, everybody.
Interesting to know what Flipkart is doing, because Flipkart is in a way the leader of sorts in the e-commerce space. And then we have Shailja. Shailja works for Strides Pharma, where she is manager of business analytics, and she is using analytics to drive benefits for her organization. So welcome all three of you. We will get started, and if there are any questions, please put it here in the group. We will take those questions at the right time, preferably at the end of the session, after the three presentations have been made. We have short presentations by each of the three panelists who will talk about their one case study, which will give some insights on the whole subject, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So let me share the screen, and let's start with Dharmendra. Okay, Dharmendra, I hope the screen is visible.
Sure. Yeah, it is visible.
Okay.
Thanks, Ali, for wonderful introduction. So I'll start with the AI part in the e-commerce, and especially on the e-commerce side, imaging has a lot of role to play, and the entire marketing, what collections you create and a catalog you create, and you drive the customer to the right set of products and catalog, plays a very, very important role. I would like to, check with the audience, when was the last time they actually saw a product, and when they entered the catalog, they saw something else. They clicked on a trouser and the content was of a shirt. Rarely happen now. All that work that you're seeing, the catalogs are growing in millions and millions every month, but there are no errors now because a lot of work by the cataloging team, the backend teams are happening, and AI is working around that the solution. Salil, so what AI has been doing is creating a lot of, reducing a lot of problem areas that you used to face in the e-commerce cataloging part. So if we by mistake also, if we write a product red and picture of white, it will bounce it off and give me an alert, and auto correction is done. Now what we're doing, we did in Karvi, we develop a solution wherein we don't even have to have a real model, human, to showcase our product. We have set of women or men we shot as a model, and then we created product catalogs on Mannequin, and the AI converts them, and I'll show it in the subsequent slide, and how it converts it into a real life model image as a product, and it's good to go live. No makeup artist required, no backend, no stylist, no pre-production, no post-production. The entire imaging is ready in matter of few minutes. What it used to take a week, or I know personally, I work very closely for my brand with cataloging partners or Flipkart, Myntra, and all those partners. It takes weeks if I send my products and to convert. Now these solutions which we worked in Karvy really, smoothened the entire process. And the other process which we actually, this came, AI cataloging came when I was sitting with my category partners when I was in Karvy and showcasing my solution there. And they told me that there is a requirement for them. They created AR-based trial rooms then that point of time, and it's not working out well because you select and then the product doesn't works out well, because the ML needs to work a lot into giving you the exact dimension of your products. So we worked on that during my Karvy days, and now we're also working in SSIPL how AR can help us in a touchscreen based trial rooms, which is very relevant for these COVID times where everyone is hesitant on physically trying a product, and then there is a cycle of 12 hours that we had to quarantine a product, steam it with Jiffy and sanitize it, and then bring it back to shelf. So we're reducing that cycle. So I'll be speaking about these two solutions that we worked on. In AI image cataloging, these tile GANs were trained in several weeks in very high capacity GPUs. And the unconditional GAN model generated realistic images. So if you see top products which were shot on a mannequin, and you can select with various version of models, various types of body frames, and various types of combination of a product, that basically reduced our SLAs of giving back the catalog shoot of our customer in from few days, from 1 week so to one day. That was the efficiency. And 1 day, because we had to still Jiffy, somebody is to put it on mannequin, shoot it, and 1 day I still say, because in a human shoot, model also keeps on changing the product herself or himself. In a mannequin, you need two people to help the mannequin to change the product. But it reduced human errors to almost zero. My product cataloged or product shots were absolutely, because the entire coding and working, the image was coded and the output was delivered in the same code of the product which we put in the input element. Can we move to the next slide? On the AI on the retail side, where we are using touchless trial, very relevant for the COVID times. You have a screen, you have a catalog browsing on the left of the screen or the right of the screen. You keep on selecting, you check the fit trial on the product, you can check the various colors, you change the outfit in almost no time. There are no queues outside the trial rooms waiting for the other people to change the product. And security hygiene of the current COVID scare, which people normally don't. And for a retailer like us, we use all the product which has tried once, quarantine for 12 hours, do a Jiffy, and then saves a lot of time and inventories for us. These are the solutions which I touch base in my e-commerce and retail domain in last 2 stints.
Dharmender, I have a question for you. I was while I was sort of exploring and reading about all this, I came across something called deepfake and how deepfake. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so it's a controversial topic, but so deepfake is real. So you can train Obama to say Sanskrit shloka and influence voters in Indian elections. So and so on and so forth. There are multiple use cases which has happened there. On commerce side, in terms of business, I've done. They're all ethical practices that we've used till now, and I have came across till now.
But is virtual trial room using the same technology somewhere, or?
No, all these models which we have used in AI cataloging, we have got consent for using their face multiple times for a period of 1 year, and beyond that we had to extend the contract of using their faces. So
Sure,
there are no
that's the legal side of it. I'm saying from the technology perspective, are you using similar technology tools? So
Yes, so there are similar technology tools in videos as well, because in e-commerce cataloging, videos is also playing a lot of important role in explaining about the product. I'm not talking about deep fakes, but AI-based video solutions are what we are working on. So there is a lot of CDN-based solution that gives you access to your videos, or curate your videos in really short time. That is what we're working on, and it's still on nascent stage, but I can share more details about this use case once
sure,
all the
sure.
speakers finish.
Okay, thank you, Dharmender. Let me move on to Zubin. Zubin is going to talk to us about improving shopping with ML. And Zubin, over to you.
Thanks, Salil. So hi everybody, pleased to be here. So I'm Zubin. I'm a product manager at Flipkart. I'm part of a small team which is called Planning Product, and we're basically trying to apply AI and ML in parts of Flipkart, mostly in P&L sensitive areas, so that Flipkart hopefully has less of an L and more of a P as time goes on. So I'm going to be discussing one such problem with you. It's a pretty straightforward problem in e-commerce. It's called selection and placement, right? Selection essentially refers to armies of category managers, right, who are picking out products, trying to figure out what will sell, what to market, what to price it at, all the stuff that people who have a P&L under their belt try and do all the time. Placement is a peculiar problem of e-commerce and modern commerce, right? Which is to say, if you've got, say, a number of locations spread across the country, right, you may not necessarily be able to offer everybody the same experience, right? All of you might have, come to an e-commerce website, pick something, found it out of stock. Out of stock doesn't necessarily mean that, we don't have it. It just means that we can't get it to you. So for us as an e-commerce company, right, it's very important to crack this problem, right, so that we have the right stuff and we also put it in the right place, right, so we can make sure that the customer who wants it is able to reach it, right? Otherwise, we might miss a sale, miss revenue, and along with that, away go our chances of making profits, right? So if we come to this as a problem, right, this is a many-tiered problem that we're working at. In Flipkart, for example, we're tackling it from both a demand and a supply side, right? Where we're trying piece by piece to sort of overcome some of the constraints which arise thanks to the subjective nature of a category selection kind of process, the physical limitations on an operational or a distribution kind of process, and see if we can apply some numbers to improve it. Now, we've actually made multiple attempts at this, right? And quite a few of our attempts have failed and a few have succeeded. If we jump to the next slide, right? The basic commonality in the things where we're finding success, right, is where we try and reduce complex problems to the simplest possible, the most atomized components, right? Many of you who have encountered AI and ML in general context, right, will sort of be familiar with this kind of universal problem, right? There's a kind of mysterious black box model. It consumes, values and variables from, thousands of different variables and sources, and it, magically comes up with an answer, which sort of deals with all of the problems at one point of time. The reality is a lot more prosaic, right? First and most prominent part of this reality, right, is that we are really slaves to the business process, right? So being process aware and figuring out, which cog in the wheel of a large machine, your data science or your machine learning model may actually fit in, is really sort of the very first priority which we figured out we need to have. So the way we sort of try and work it now is we try and really go down, to a very, very granular level, right? We try and separate, things. Let's take an example. Let's suppose as a category manager, you're selling shoes or you're selling TVs or whatever it is you might be selling. We want to separate the quantity problem, right, from the selection problem, even at that grain, right? So maybe you want to decide that there are N brands of TV that you might want to sell, or N versions or models. That's a separate problem. How much of each you want to sell, that's a separate problem. Both of these two parts of the problem, we're going to build different models and we're going to try and solve them in different ways, right? A simpler method, which a lot of people might do, would be to say that I'm going to just decide and figure out, say, using basic trends like historical sales or something, what might be my final model cross quantity number. But that's not how we're doing it here, right? And the reason of that directly is just because we found that the more atomic we get, right, the better it is for us at the end of the scale. So if we jump to the next slide, right, what we've got basically here is the fact we start off with the process, right? We want to restructure this process, right, to put AI ML in certain specific nodes, right? And the main thing that we're really observing off of this, right, is let's suppose there are so many steps in a process, maybe there's 10 steps, right? At the end of this is a number which we want to move, right? It's, the profit number or the margin number or, the cost number. Different, things may have different objectives, right? um, the way that we really want to move the final target, right, is sort of pick out a couple of nodes, right, where we can have the biggest possible impact, right? In some ways, this is absolutely nothing more than common sense business theory, right? The sort of things which people in consulting firms might say. Pick out a node, find out what's the operational bottleneck. It's actually quite a classic method in operations consulting days gone by. But rather in this space, there's one prominent inversion, right? Which is that we're actually not looking for the problem point, right? And this may seem odd or counterintuitive, right? There might be a huge bottleneck. And in terms of tackling the process, we might just say, we're not going to touch this bottleneck at all, right? And the reason for that, right, is that your AI ML models, right, despite their complexity and the heavy duty, right, they are still fundamentally stupid, right? They are not really well suited to handling complex problems in complex ways. The actual better application is to use a complex solution on a simple problem to solve it really, really well, right? And the really well should be to such an extent that you are able to have a huge delta in a very, very localized part of your total problem space. This huge delta, right, in one part of the problem is your translation to getting some, whatever, trickle down delta or movement in your final metric or number, right? This is exactly, in fact, what we've done at Flipkart to significantly reduce costs on large part of our entire fulfillment and supply chain, as well as increase, the amount of customer NPS and services that you guys might actually get. So obviously, yeah, quick few notes on whatever experiences we've had over here. This trickle down effect is sort of key towards leveraging an application of ML, right? Rather than the sort of generalized concept which we so far been discussing. There's a few other things which you, if you should ever attempt it, should keep in mind, right, to try and leverage. The first is there's a strong tendency to averages in any industry, right? And if you're not sort of finding the average, there's probably a problem in your classification of data or your research level. You have to find this regression to this average, right, and exploit it, right? Because averages are where machines and their outcomes are really strong, right? It's not really on outliers or even on the number of cases, right? Couple of other things is you got to remember to be really quite creative with how you go about it, right? This is a double-edged sword, right? But basically, if one goes with the perspective of using, working with what you have, right, you'll usually find it's not adequate, right? Filling in the gaps, right, from a purely technical perspective might seem like a mountain to climb in itself, but it doesn't have to be so. Rather, it's an exercise in imagination and, trying to figure out creative substitutes, right? Lastly, always go for scale over sophistication, right? Which is to say, don't go for the most accurate part of the model, right? Go for the one which will best meet other requirements that you might have. For instance, like Dharmendra was just talking about, if you're running things for a web page and say you want to do something in ML which will do something for the user in real time, this real time impact is a lot more important than how accurate you might be able to return a result to the user, right? It's an example of scale over sophistication. Going ahead with this, right, we've got a few problems, which we are sort of coming up with. In Flipkart in particular, we have a really, clear approach, right, where our ML and DS outcomes, right, they have to get to the point where they are binding, right? That's really our usage criteria in our business and the market, right? Which basically means that it's no human oversight, right? There's no, overriding. There's no, addition. There's no change, right? So we're trying to move it from an intelligence input, right, which is how often analytics is used into human decision making, to something which can, do the job on its own, right? And this creates its own problems. That have we covered enough cases? If something new comes up, is it flexible enough to take care of this newness, right? Non-determinism is a big problem of any complex machine learning model, right? A simple example of what non-determinism means, right? Most of us, for instance, would have studied something like LP, linear programming in school, right? And you would remember that an LP is basically, they had this kind of graph solve, right? You take 2, 3 functions, you graph them out, right? And create like a shape on your, x-axis and y-axis, and the shape was your solution world, right? So what an easy way to think about it, right, is every ML problem is kind of like that LP, right? Its solution space is an actual vector space of numbers, right? Which solution, right, it might pick from that and actually apply is something which is not guessable or deterministic, right? If you have, say, lots of axes rather than just 2 axes, it could choose, one solution one time when x is 1, y is 0, x is 0, y is 1. And as long as they're all valid solutions according to our model, it could all work out. But this is a hell of a problem in trying to verify anything, trying to be consistent with data, especially if you've got things which have financial consequences. It's a big problem. Then there's a confirmation and reinforcement bias, right? This is a lot of media text devoted to this, right? The fact that AI models have biases. It's a big problem, when you hear of models applied in, say, law enforcement, surveillance, things like that. But it's even more of a problem actually in small business problems, right? Because you want to sort of have the fear of getting into a loop, right? Where the model is giving you an output, you follow that output, it creates data which confirms the model's previous inclinations, and the loop sort of keeps getting stuck into that, right? So post COVID, for example, was a big problem with this, right? Because we were training on data for pre-COVID patterns, but the world has sort of changed. So we had to do, say, a lot of catch up to undo some of this kind of biasing which is there. Finally, there's the Jurassic Park problem, which is basically, if you recall the movie Jurassic Park, right? They took a dinosaur genome, plugged gaps from amphibian DNA, and it allowed the dinosaurs to reproduce and take over the world, presumably. So it's sort of the same thing with AI/ML, right? Like I mentioned earlier, you've got to be a bit creative in supplying solutions to the problems. These solutions themselves, lead to problems down the line. They give things a life of their own, add hidden biases and tricks, which later leave it less flexible or less elastic than in theory it should be. So these are stuff that we're sort of, dealing with in terms of challenges here at Flipkart.
Zubin, I have a question
yeah,
for you.
go ahead.
So, typically the way I understand AI and ML, and I can be completely wrong, is that beyond just creating a model which can happen over and over again, you actually create the capability for the machine to keep learning and improving that model. Is that something that you're already doing? And if yes, can you sort of talk a little bit about it?
Sure. So the phenomenon that you're talking there is a specific area. It's called deep learning, right? It's basically where rather than provide any kind of a goal seek to a quantitative structure, which is what a model is, you basically let it loose and try and it'll draw its own conclusions on what it should do and what it should not do. Now, DL is something that we are actually using in very, very specific cases, right? The expanded dream, right, where you're talking about, say, you throw everything to a model and it figures out, where you should spend money or where you can make money, right? That's what's called like a generalized intelligence, right? Something, which can take abstractions, right? Resolve them into patterns and then draw conclusions out. So we're not doing that right now. It doesn't seem like a value add process to us, as I mentioned earlier. But for very specific problems, we do use deep learning methods rather than human insight to draw the first level of pattern.
Okay. Okay, great. Zubin, thank you so much. So we now have Shailja. Shailja, would you like to take over and I shall put up your slide. Shailja is going to talk to us about churn prediction strategies in e-commerce.
So hi, I'll be talking about a very specific application, churn prediction. Churn is a problem in a lot of industries, so I have picked up e-commerce. Now what happens is that we want to identify people who are likely to churn so that we can formulate strategies for them to retain them. That is our ultimate goal. and it is not possible for a human, given the size and scale of customers that we have in e-commerce, to predict using their own intelligence that this person is likely to churn. So we leave that task to the machines. So how, okay, so firstly we need to define that what, who do you call as a churned customer. So let's say, I mean, the definitions could be different for different companies, different industries. So let's say my definition is that a person who has not transacted in the past 1 year. This definition can change according to your company's definition. So now I need to understand, see, the machine will only understand the language of numbers. So whatever decision you were making earlier using your own common sense, I mean, the common sense that the people who only buy during sales, the people who only buy once in a while, the people who don't check emails, that is my common sense, which says that these people are more likely to churn than others. Now I am doing nothing in MLAI. What I'm doing is whatever decisions I used to take on my own, I am simply supplying data for the same things. And sometimes what happens in AI ML is you have pre biases, right? As an experienced professional, this is what causes churn. But machine will tell me trends which I may not even have thought about. So it will unearth different patterns that these are the kind of people more likely to churn with this much probability. So that is the power that machine learning and AI has. So let's say we will take I've just these are the like different variables we could consider: the demographic information, the online behavior, purchase history, monetary value, what kind of products do they purchase, is it electronics, is it like FMCG products, is it clothes, whatever. So what kind of interactions do they have with my website, so all of these, so different things, I'll be supplying the values for all these. And then my output variable is whether this person would like be churned or not. So the data would be there with me, right? In the past, people with this type of history have churned or not. So I already have the data. Now I need my model to figure out to basically find trends, how this x, the input variables and output variables, how are they related, the function y is equal to f of x. So machine learning is nothing but finding that function f. One example of machine learning could be, let's say, a decision tree. So you have a decision tree that if a person has been with my company for greater than 5 years and he's a regular customer, then he's not likely to churn. So looking at this decision tree, you can find out which person is likely to churn and which person is not likely to churn. Machine learning is nothing but the creation of this decision tree by the machine. Who creates this decision tree? It will vary for different data, right? So the machine, I mean, the algorithm is creating this for you in the background. Now if any new customer will come, the algorithm will correctly predict with whatever accuracy it has for the new people. This, I mean, can you please go to the next slide?
Yeah, sure.
So the main thing is that machine learning is mainly, now it will help me in hyper segmentation. So okay, I will have predictions about the new people, that this person is likely to churn and this person is not likely to churn. But then I would also, I can also make hyper segments for, let's say, I have a list of, I supplied 1 million customers data, and machine predicted that out of these 1 million, let's say 10,000 are likely to churn. So I want to know more about these 10,000 customers. So let's say my company does not want to invest equally on all these 10,000 people. So I want to know that out of these 10,000, who are the customers who will give more value to my company, and who are the people who will give less value to my company. So I can even create clusters. Clusters as in the similar type of people will be grouped together. So let's say the college going people who don't spend enough too much money, they are in one category. The other category could be people who are in the like working population age, 25 to, let's say, whatever, 60, and they shop once in a while. So there could be different segments, right? The segments could be region based, whatever. So I can have different strategies for those different customers. Now it is not possible to visualize this on your own. What kind of customers have the similar behavior? You cannot use your own intelligence. You can to some extent, but for hyper segmentation, it's, machine will do a much better job than a human being. So basically machine learning is not there to replace human intelligence. It is there to assist human beings. And actually now we are coming up with models which use machine learning and expert knowledge or domain expertise to make very very good strategies. And I feel machine learning is really the future, and it is very much needed. If you cannot make decisions for very very large millions of people. So now in my company, when I mean we basically predicted the churn, and we identified different strategies for different type of segments of customers. Let's say the high sale value customers, we had different strategies. For the lower sale value customers, we had different strategies. So after understanding who is likely to churn and implementing the strategies, we were able to bring down the churn to more than 20%, saving around 4 crores. So you can calculate the cost you're saving by multiplying the number of people in each segment with the average customer lifetime value that they are likely to get for your company. So this is mainly about how machine learning is very important and crucial. And it's very important for managers also to know at least the basics of it, because we cannot say that it's, I personally don't think it is not important. I feel it's very important. And the future lies in data driven decision making, and not just expert knowledge based domain knowledge based decision making. The future is going to combine both data and expert knowledge. So yeah.
Okay, so Shalja, I have a question for you. You divided your customers into 3 segments. What
Yeah.
I read about AI ML is you
Yeah.
can actually keep stratifying this more and more, because today, data can be handled, with the advent of big data and the supercomputing power. You can actually move towards customer centricity. So you can technically be looking at segmenting it in many more groups. Is that, any comments on that?
So Salil, I just kept it for the simplicity sake, because I cannot explain. I thought that in the slides, it would not make sense to include so many segments. But
Okay.
you're right. So in actuality, we did not really segment based on. See, we don't segment based on our own knowledge. I don't segment people that the higher sales value should be segmented. I let the machine decide that. I simply so machine will tell me that these are the 3 different or 5 different or 20 different segments, and their behaviors are totally different from each other. So we will have different strategies for all of these hyper segments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I have 2 questions. The first question is for Zubin from Ravi, MN Ravi. And he is asking Zubin to share his experience how analytics has significantly helped human decision making in the e-commerce world.
Sure. So, I mean, off the top of my head, there are a couple of things which I can think of which are obviously superior, right? The first really comes from the fact that a machine can be purely objective, right? And your analytical decision making, therefore, will always strictly follow parameters, that you set it up for, right? So long as your parameters are open, one can often have very surprising results, right? Like for instance, the share of a simple thing would just be, the share of consumption in India which comes from non-metro cities, right? Basis any sort of heuristic data, you might draw some conclusions, but a purely objective research of trials, errors, and experiments might yield a different result and give you a different strategy, which you could then leverage to your advantage, as players in e-commerce have done successfully, right? A second thing apart from this sort of objectivity, right, really is the scale part, which Shailaja also touched upon, right? I think one of the main things about ML/AI, enabled a lot by computing advances like the cloud, right, is that it's freeing from many of the sampling restrictions and the limited restrictions which classically we were sort of bound by, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that we're purely free of it, right? Because you can't necessarily expand to infinity or any population size. But just by virtue of being able to handle huge numbers, right, makes it so much more likely that any analysis that you would do, any mathematical method, is much more likely closer to the true number, right? And this really is the power of the analytical or the mathematical approach, right? If you can use it to get close to the true number, it's something which is beating human intuition by any points of time, right? Not only is it likely to be more accurate, it's more consistent. It's not dependent on individuals or arcane knowledge, right? It can be transparent, it can be shared. So these two, I think, really are the key benefits that I would think.
Zubin, I have one more question from Santosh. I think that's also addressed to you. Which algorithm did you use to create the decision tree?
I will not reveal that at the moment, but it's an in-house algorithm, right? Whatever we do is developed in-house, right? We do rely heavily on Flipkart on public libraries, also open source libraries across Python, R, many other things as well. There are a few proprietary libraries also which we purchase, right, from other players. But other than that, our attempt really is to try and create solutions to the problem we have, and our assumption really is that we know best. So,
okay. Thank you. So we have time for a few more questions. Meanwhile, I have
I'd like
another.
to add, Salil,
Yeah, sure, Dharmendra.
points Shailaja mentioned on the CLV segmentation also. See, the decision maker has to have a very smart AI, which is actual intelligence. And in current time, that is very relevant. The CLVs, which our data analytics team throw, you have to be very dynamic to take quick decision on the changing times. During the lockdown, we have even the lowest CLV base buying our gift vouchers and enabling us with some cash flows and assuring us some sales post lockdown. So what I was trying to say when Shailaja was finishing was the AI will, on the marketing side, the marketing team, AI will all keep on throwing a lot of data, and you can train that algorithm to give you different segmentation of data. But the user or people who are consuming that data and making decision has to be also very heavy on the AI, which is actual intelligence. So, and that has to be very prompt these days. And Shailaja, you would have any other use case on the CLV? You probably would have thought is this lower or middle segment, but someday it's surprised.
So there are quite a few questions, and I do want to finish at 6:15. So there's a question from Kashif Mohammed. How do you validate that a model, say the churn decision tree, is working from business perspective and not just statistically? And
so it's actually, so it's question for Shailaja or for me?
No, it's okay. You can also answer. That's fine.
So the churn, see, basically every campaign gives us a churn percentage, ROI, and the data gives us the volume. But decision to do a campaign basis a segment is on the past data. And current times are very, very changing and very I must say fluid right now. And Shailaja, would you like to add more on that churn percentage and that decision making?
Yeah, I'll add because it's okay. So the thing is that firstly,
Shailaja, get your mic closer to you, please.
Yeah, oh sorry. So machine is firstly less likely to make errors. Given the scale, you have millions of customers. You cannot make the decision for every customer on your own. First thing is that. Second thing is the more data you have, the more number of variables. See, whatever decision you will make using your own intelligence, you are simply coding that into numbers and letting the machine do the same thing that you would have done. So it is similar to taking a decision on your own, but it's going to be even more accurate. So yes, so if you are saying that how will it be is it only statistically correct? No, it's not true. The more business related variables you add, right, what like the variables I mentioned, the demographic information, how that person interacts, online behavior, offline behavior, whatever, the more closer it will be to the real life outcome. And then there is also an accuracy metric that you will have for each model. But definitely you can't make those decisions on your own given the scale that we have, right? So yes.
Okay, Shailaja, one more question for you. You mentioned ML does the segmentation of population. Who provides the logic for carrying segmentation? This is from Vijay Kumar. And then there is another one which says, how do you identify potential biases, errors in algorithms, and how do you check for those? So
Okay, so
that's from Chandu. Those will be the two last questions. And just let's keep it brief, please.
yeah, okay. So the first question was, how do you understand, how the segmentation is done? So there is a lot of maths behind it. So the different algorithms will work according to their different maths. So KNN, I can just tell you, as in, see, mathematically, what I will do, how will I segment people? If one person is similar in behavior to another person, I will say he is in the same segment. Machine is doing the same thing. It is just analyzing your data, income, age, gender, online behavior, whatever, the flags that you have. It is simply mapping people with similar type of behavior together. So see, you can, so you will have segments, okay, segment 1, 2, 3, but it will, machine will not tell you what this segment is. It will just tell you this is the average age for this segment, this is the average shopping spend for this segment. So you will have to name it on your own, using your own intelligence. It will just give you numbers, right? It will not tell you these are the high shoppers, this segment is what. So it is combination of both. The second is, how will you remove the errors? The first thing is, as we are moving ahead, right, MLAI is advancing a lot. Firstly, there are very, very few biases. If you compare it to personal biases that people have, machines will have far lesser biases, to be honest. Okay, all the algorithms, and there is not just one algorithm, there are multiple algorithms. So you can use multiple algorithms to predict, and then you can take an average also. So that is another ML technique which will reduce, you will take you will tell decision tree to give one output, you will tell regression to give another output, and some other algorithm to give some other output, and then you will club all the three and take something which is average or majority, whatever. So that is a different type of ML algorithm altogether, called as ensemble. So biases will be reduced in that way. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So there's one, last question from Sakshi. She's saying churn strategy is something similar to Six Sigma strategy. I'm not sure if that's a question or a statement. Any comment from Dharmender? Okay, anybody? Okay, with that, can we come to the closing? Any closing comments, Dharmender? Just one or two lines that you want to say in closure. I had one very interesting question. If you want to answer that question in one or two lines.
Yeah, go ahead.
All this AI and ML, will this change the structure of the marketing organization? What do you see happening in the next few years?
It is actually already changing the structure of marketing organization. You can't live without AI ML based data analytics. The kind of data consumer base you have now is actually not possible in a regular regression or a statistical tool which we used to use initially. It's already changing. It's
okay,
already
great. Zubin, your take on this?
Sure, yeah, I think it will change. I think the change has sort of only begun in that sense. I would suggest, he says, just speaking on a few words in a question, I see the marketing organization hasn't changed yet. Rather, the organization has come to a point where it's able to leverage data, add human insight, and make the most of it. But there is, I think, a time coming when the organization itself will really be overhauled in a major way. And it's not very far away. It's just like 4 or 5 years.
Okay, Shelja, your take?
You said that AIML will it change? So I think, obviously the marketing strategy, the domain knowledge is of course very important. Business sense is very important. If you're just a coder or a statistician, then it's of no use. So you need to, of course, have the business knowledge. But I feel that with time, people would be required to also have at least a basic understanding of AIML, so that they can handle those teams. That's my take on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are up to 6:15. As I said, I do not want to extend this session beyond that. I think there's a lot of excitement. Thank you, all three of you, for making this a very interesting session. I think we are a large number of participants, and the number of questions just indicates that we enjoyed. Everyone enjoyed themselves. I have left my, left an email address, contact@images.in. If you still have a question, please write to that, and I will connect you either with the speaker or we'll try and get you an answer. If you have liked this session, maybe you can just raise your hand, or there's an option to raise your hand and just acknowledge that you enjoyed, or leave a message for us. we will have, we look forward to seeing you again next Friday. The session next Friday is on non-linear careers and the future of work. We want to talk about how work life will be different in the 2020s. So we have a lady, Kavita, who's going to talk to you about careers and how careers will evolve, especially the younger viewers who are still in the process of forming their careers, may be interested in knowing what is going on. Sakshi, let me just quickly say, I'm just asking Six Sigma strategy found errors on testing. Okay, Sakshi, I'm not sure we have an answer for you right now. If I find an answer, I'll get back to you. Send me a mail and we'll see if we can do something. Prakha is saying, thank you, great session. There are a couple of other messages. Ravi is saying, great session. Thank you very much, everyone. Pleasure, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Salim. Thank you, Shailaja. Thank you, Zubin.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone, for attending this session.